Hi, my loves. Y'all just came for the tea, didn't you? My experience working for a bad company. Many of you will say, Autumn, you shouldn't post that. What if your next employer watches it? Look, this is not a video for me to trash talk, slander my previous company. In fact, nowhere in this video will you even see the name of the company that I worked for, and no names are going to be mentioned. This is my experience. So why do I want to share this experience? I think I learned a lot from this experience. Damn, I learned so much from this experience. And I grew a lot from this experience, but it was not without quite a bit of survival skill and some pain involved. But also, I want others to learn from this experience. You don't have to be trapped in a bad company. You don't have to be trapped under the thumb of a bad leader. And I don't want anyone to feel that way. And a lot of the stories I'll share, I'll also share some of the emotion behind the story. I may have to record this in 2 parts. So if I just end abruptly at the end of this, you know there's a second part coming. I don't know if I have enough battery life or memory on my SD card to record my whole story in one sitting. But I also want to share this video because what I did learn, maybe not above and beyond everything else, but something that has really impacted me the greatest was I learned a lot about leadership. And I was fortunate enough to be on the leadership development team for a while, and I was able to develop curriculum. I was able to develop leaders across North America for our company. And that brought out a passion in me that I did not even know that I had. And as a result of that, I'm going to start a second channel. It should go live sometime in September. I'm collaborating on this channel with a former peer of mine. But we want to talk about leadership, life coaching, all of the fundamentals that are necessary to be happy and successful, not just in the workplace, although that will be a highlight, but also in life. So that is one positive thing that came out of this experience. So on to the tea. Every time I say tea, take a drink. So this company I worked for almost 10 years, and I had graduated with my associate's degree. I did not yet have my bachelor's degree. I had my associate's degree, and I quickly realized I couldn't get a job anywhere in my career field because they all wanted experience, which I didn't have. I had the degree that I paid a lot for, but I didn't have the experience, and so I couldn't find a job. So I applied at this company as a temporary job. That was always a running joke because here we were 10 years later. It was definitely a temporary job. When I started, I was an agent in an inbound call center. And so you're dealing with customers of various companies. Now, what I did find was I wasn't too bad at taking calls. It didn't bother me. It didn't upset me. My metrics were really good. And so I was quickly promoted. Within about 3 months of working for this company, I was promoted to a team manager. So I had my own team that I got to kind of show them the things that I did on the phone. And that was a great experience. It was probably my most rewarding experience. I didn't really know a lot about coaching. I didn't know a lot about development. I still didn't know a whole heck of a lot about call centers. But what I did know was how to take a call, how to be super friendly on the phone, how to de-escalate someone that was angry, etc., etc. So I just shared that with the people that I led, and I also gave them trust. So after a year of being the number one, sometimes I've dropped down to 2 or 3, but usually number one, the number one team in the site, I was promoted to account manager. Much like when I was promoted to team manager, I didn't really know what I was doing. But I had some leaders. My site director was brilliant and amazing, and he understood me. He understood how I worked, how I ticked. And so anything that I talk about in my experiences, I want to make sure that everyone's aware, never involved him. He truly was a wonderful, great leader. Probably to date the best leader that I ever had. And I learned a lot under him. And he had faith in me in this role. So what an account manager did is you manage the team managers, and then you also spoke with the client. So you reported back to the client, you were on calls with the client, etc., etc. So I was learning as I went. It was a sink or swim environment because you did not get any training. You did not get any development. It was here's your laptop, go. And you either succeeded or you failed. And failure was not an option for me. So I worked hard. I worked so hard. And I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, you'll have people that reported to me that were like, she didn't know what she was doing. She was the worst leader ever. And maybe there were times that I was, but I tried to be a good leader. And so far up to this point, everything was going really well. I had no complaints. And so after we're going on 2.5 to the 3-year mark, I loved this company. I loved this company for giving me opportunities. I loved my leader for believing in me. I was devoted, I was dedicated, and I was loyal to this company for everything that they had given me. It's important to remember this. So a year after being account manager, I got another promotion to senior manager. Senior manager was a little bit of a different role. I dare say it was easier. I managed the relationship with the client, and I got to travel to Costa Rica, to different states. It was wonderful. I loved it. A year after that, our senior account manager that ran operations, so all the account managers reported up to him, he left. So the spot was open, and 3 of my directors and my site director said, we want you. And I said, no. No. Like, I'd only been in the call center environment like about 4 years, and you want like 600-700 people to directly or indirectly report to me? No. But then my site director, he gave me this big pep talk, and he said, I don't want anyone else in this role but you. So I said, hell to the yeah. We'll take it. So I took it. And again, it's like every other leadership role. I made mistakes. Shit, I made mistakes. But I also got a little bit better view of the leaders above me, the more executive level leaders. And in this position as a senior account manager, I had to make some hard, or I had to take some hard actions. And I oftentimes disagreed with those actions. And I oftentimes disagreed with the actions that my leaders took. There was one particular instance where we had an escalation agent that was caught with his cell phone. Now, he did what his team manager told him to do. He forgot the key to his locker. He turned the phone off, put it in his desk drawer, and his team manager said, your first break, go to the store. There was a store down by the site. Go to the store, buy another lock for your locker. So he did as his team manager told him. And he got caught with the cell phone. So my leaders, with the exception of my site director, told me to fire him. And I didn't think that was the right thing to do. So I said, no, I'm not going to fire him. And I went and stood in front of 3 of my directors who my boss reported to. And I said, I'm not going to. And here's why. Because I knew it was the wrong thing to do. And my site director supported my decision. And I was forced to fire him anyway. I was not given a choice. Another story was my HR manager. We had a meeting, all of my account managers, myself, a few other leaders in the site, and her. We were having a spirit week, and we were trying to come up with ideas for this spirit week. And my site was predominantly African American. I would say as high as probably 85% African American. Many of my account managers in that room during this conversation were African American. My HR manager was white. And she says, and I quote, we should play hangman. That would be fitting around here. I quickly ended the meeting, absolutely appalled. And I called her boss and my boss's boss. And I said, oh my God, this just happened. And they laughed. They laughed and said, well, just go talk to her. And I was infuriated. I didn't understand how they could take something so serious so lightly. I had one account manager that was just incredibly upset, as she should have been, because it was wrong. It was wrong. This HR manager continuously targeted one of my account managers, an African American male. And I did everything humanly possible to protect him from her. Now, all this comes into play momentarily. Also during this time, I was constantly, by these executive level leaders, constantly being teased about the way I dressed, my heels. Comments were made like stripper pole heels. And I wasn't comfortable with it. But I tolerated it because, you know, I was in the big boy club now. That's what you do. You tolerate it. I think another part of it was I thought I can ignore that because I want that next level. I want that next promotion. So it's fine. They can say what they want about my heels. And I'm sure if you were to ask them about it, they would say, it was just a joke. Like the hangman, it was just a joke. I don't know if they took the same sexual harassment training that I took, but those jokes aren't funny. Not in the workplace. So anyway, those are some of the examples of some of the things that I dealt with while I was a senior account manager. And so because I stood up for these situations, I may not have always vocalized myself the best. I will give you that. I was labeled as emotional. Yeah, I do get emotional when I have an HR manager that makes racist comments. Absolutely. So I was labeled as emotional. I was in this role for 2 years when our site director quit. And he had spent the past year fully preparing me to take the role. So when he quit, they put me in the role as an interim or acting site director. And I did really well. In fact, I did so well that our client came for a visit, and the client hugged me on the way out the door and said the site had been ran better than he had seen in a long time. Now, if that is not one of the most telling comments, I don't know what is. So it got down between me and this other guy. We went through our interviews, and in the end, he was chosen. So when I had the conversation with the man that made the decision, this was the feedback that I was given. Well, it was 10 years experience versus 5. And I said, that's not really good enough. I said, I need you to give me something that I can take away from this phone conversation and begin working on. So this is what he told me. You're too emotional, and you show favoritism towards one of your account managers. He was speaking about the African American male that I was constantly protecting against my HR manager. So I did not get that site director role because I was emotional and I showed favoritism. So I was pretty upset about it. I wasn't happy. I do find it odd that they gave me a $5,000 thank you for manning the fort for 3 months. I've never heard of them doing that before. It was the first, but would not be the last time that I felt like I was given a little bit of hush money. And I was vocalizing my frustration to this man's peer, one of this man's peers. He had a couple that came to the site. And this person told me in Skype, so it's saved out there in the land of Skype, if anyone wants to retrieve it. This person said, you didn't get it, just so you know, because you're a woman. He made the comment to me that they needed a few more men on the team. Okay. All right. No biggie. Now, many of you will sit and say, well, why didn't you do something? I had loyalty. I was dedicated to this company. And I think another part of me wanted to just prove myself that despite being told I belong on a stripper pole with my heels, or despite being told I'm emotional, or despite being told I show favoritism, when you freaking know why I'm so protective of this account manager, I wanted to succeed in spite of those things. And I was determined to do so. So our new site director starts, and he's an epic freaking fail. An epic fail. He does things so terribly that the site's performance begins to drop. The site's financials start hitting the toilet. He's terrible. And I'm constantly having to do my job, do his job, and clean up his messes. And I was exhausted. I could not gain my footing just trying to clean up after this man. And he told me one day, I was in the HR office with him and the HR manager, and they had made a mess. They made the mess. I didn't make it. They made it. And he told me, I need you to go handle this. I said, no, I'm not going to. I said, this is your mess. You handle it. And he looked me in the eye and he said, if you don't do it, I will remove you from being senior account manager. And I looked him in the eye and I said, do it. And I walked out and slammed my door. He was a disaster. a disaster. And guess who? The very people that put him in his position, guess who they turned to constantly make it right? Oh, Miss Emotional. So he only lasted about 8 months, and he was removed from his position because he was terrible. But after that 8 months, I was spent. I remember about that time having a conversation with my boss, not my site director, remember he's gone now, with my boss at the time. I had worked 21 straight days. This was a Thursday. This conversation is also saved via the land of Skype. I'd worked 21 straight days without a day off. I was working that Saturday and Sunday. This is a Thursday. I said, I'm going to take tomorrow off. And he replies back, do you think that's a good idea? To which I may have gotten a little emotional. And I said, I've worked 21 straight days and I'm working this weekend. I think it's a fantastic idea. So I took that day off. After they removed the site director, guess who was put in the role of acting site director? That's right. Oh, Miss Emotional. But I will tell you, I was completely spent. I wasn't functioning. I mean, I had worked full steam for 8 months, doing an enormous amount of work, completely frustrated, exhausted. I was in a terrible state mentally. I just was. So I think the leaders that were above me could see that I was spent. You know, I don't think that they knew that I knew the reasons why I didn't get that site director role. I don't think they knew that. I think there was a little bit of guilt for not giving it to me because the choice they made went down in an epic ball of flames, and that mistake caused me to have to just completely and totally exhaust myself for 8 months. It was a disaster. So they created this new role. They created it for me, essentially. It was called a Chief People Officer. And what they wanted me to do was go from site to site that we had on our account. There was about 4 different sites, and make sure that all of the sites were really fulfilling their servant leadership request. We had recently made a very huge adjustment to servant leadership, and we wanted to make sure the sites were doing it. So I was in this new role. I wasn't in this role for long at all. When my boss asked me if I would go to a site in Alabama for 2 weeks just to help get their TLs developed. So I headed to Montgomery for 2 weeks.